The scent of old wood and dust filled the attic. Every step Chloe took made the floorboards creak, as if the house itself was whispering memories she'd forgotten. It was her first time back since her mother started forgetting the names of flowers, the months, her own daughter. Now, her mother lived with her. A quiet presence in the back bedroom, where time seemed to freeze, where Alzheimer's took the shape of silence and forgetting. Some mornings, Lucy smiled like she knew Chloe. Most days, she looked at her like a kind stranger. That afternoon, Chloe had climbed up to the attic without a real reason. Maybe she was searching for something to remind her of who her mother had once been before the illness started slowly erasing the lines of her familiar face. It was there, among boxes of childhood books and dusty photo albums, that she saw it. A wooden box, weathered with time. On the lid, a firm, slightly slanted handwriting. For Chloe to read when I no longer remember. Chloe's heart stopped for a second. Her hands trembled as she opened the lid. Inside, there were 10 letters, numbered, folded with almost ceremonial care. None were sealed. It was as if her mother had known when the time came, Chloe would understand that each letter held what remained of her. She pulled out the first one. The paper carried a soft scent of lavender, the same perfume her mother used to wear on Sundays. The envelope simply read, "For when you feel like you're losing me." The handwriting was slightly shaky, but still unmistakable. Chloe took a deep breath and began to read. "My dear Chloe, I know there will come a day when your eyes will search for mine and won't find them. I know it'll hurt and you'll wonder where I've gone. The truth is, I'll be leaving slowly, like a tide that slips away without warning. But before the waves carry me off, I'm leaving these pieces of me. Stories, memories, and love. So much love. When you miss me, read. When you're angry, read. When you don't have the words, read. And when everything feels lost. Remember, you are the reason I fought to remember." The tears came without warning. Chloe pressed the letter to her chest and, for the first time in weeks, didn't feel so alone in that silent house. Downstairs, the clock chimed 6 times. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the wooden floor. In that moment, she knew each letter was a doorway. And the journey was just beginning. The smell of fresh bread filled the kitchen. Chloe stirred the chamomile tea as she glanced toward the living room, where Lucy sat by the window, eyes fixed on the garden like she was waiting for someone to return from the past. Sometimes she spoke to the roses. Other times, she just watched them quietly, as if trying to remember their names. "Mom, want some tea?" Chloe asked gently. Lucy slowly turned her head. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, but it vanished quickly. "You look so much like her," she murmured, smiling faintly. Chloe swallowed hard. She was used to these moments, though they didn't always hurt any less. She sat beside her and took her hand, wrinkled, cold, and fragile like old paper. That's when the wind drifted through the window, carrying the scent of the sea. A warm, salty breeze, impossible in this neighborhood, so far from the coast. But Chloe closed her eyes. And remembered. She must have been about 8 years old. Running barefoot across the sand, her dress flying behind her in the wind. Her mom chased after her, laughing loudly, a laugh full of light and freedom. "Run, my little wave!" Lucy called out. "The ocean doesn't wait." They reached the edge of the water. Chloe hesitated, the waves looked too big. But her mom knelt beside her and said, in that calm voice of hers, "The ocean comes and goes, sweetheart. But we learn how to float. When it takes something from you, it always brings something back. Always." Chloe smiled. She dipped her feet in the water and, hand in hand with her mother, felt invincible. Back in the living room, Chloe was still holding her mother's hand. Lucy's eyes were closed now, but there was a faint smile on her lips, like she had gone back, too, just for a moment. Without saying a word, Chloe stood and went to her bedroom. She opened the box on her nightstand. The second letter was there, waiting. The envelope read, "For when you miss who I used to be." She opened it carefully, like touching an open wound. My Chloe. If you're reading this letter, maybe you're searching for the woman who used to be your mother, the one who made heart-shaped pancakes and told bedtime stories. Maybe, in the face that looks at you now, all you see is a hollow reflection. But I'm still here. Even if the mirror of memory has fogged over, my love for you hasn't faded. Because love doesn't live in memory. It lives in the heart. Look into my eyes. I may not say your name, but if you smile at me, I'll still smile back. That's love too. And that, my girl, Alzheimer's will never be able to take away. The tears came again, but this time they felt different. Not just sadness. There was a gentle warmth to them, like a calm tide, bringing memories back to the surface. Not to hurt, but to heal. In the living room, the clock struck 7. Lucy was still there, sitting by the window, like an old lighthouse whose light still flickered now and then. Chloe pressed the letter to her chest. She knew the next one would come at the right time. She knew her mother was still here, maybe not whole, but still loving. And for today, that was enough. Chloe held the second letter in her hands for hours before she found the courage to open it. She fell asleep with it in her lap, curled up on the living room couch where her mother used to knit and hum softly, like her voice was still woven into the flower-embroidered pillows. The envelope was marked with a carefully drawn number 2 and a title in the bottom corner. The House with the Blue Shutters. The next morning, with a tight chest and a cold cup of tea beside her, Chloe broke the silence of the house with her mother's voice. A voice that now lived on paper. You were 6 the first time you fell off your bike. You cried, of course, scraped knee, wounded pride. I ran to you, but I didn't pick you up. I knelt beside you and said, "Get up, sweetheart. You can do it. It's just fear, and fear we swallow with strength and courage." Chloe felt a lump in her throat. She remembered the red bike with rubber handles and a duck-shaped horn. She remembered the fall, the sting of embarrassment, and her mother smiling proudly as she pedaled again even with her knee bleeding. The letter went on. That memory is yours, but it's mine too. The house with the blue shutters should still be there. If you want to find a piece of us, go back. Look at the sidewalk. There's something of yours waiting there. Pushed by a longing that hurt and comforted her at the same time, Chloe grabbed her keys and drove to the old neighborhood. The street looked smaller than she remembered. The trees, once towering giants, barely peeked over the rooftops now. But there it was, the house with the blue shutters, faded and peeling, but solid, like it had been waiting for her. A crooked for sale sign hung from the wooden gate. The yard was overgrown, but a small patch of daisies remained, her mother's favorite flowers. On the sidewalk, Chloe noticed a small carving in the trunk of a tree. She stepped closer, touching it with her fingertips like brushing against a forgotten secret. C for Chloe. L for Lucy. And a heart carved by tiny hands on a summer afternoon. She closed her eyes. A woman appeared on the porch of the house next door and mentioned that the little symbol had been there 4 decades, and no one had ever known what it meant. Chloe smiled through misty eyes. She knew. It was a childhood altar. A love sealed in wood. Before she left, she snapped a photo of the carving. Just a detail on an ordinary tree, but inside that crooked, innocent etching lived an entire story. A gesture of love hidden in plain sight. On the drive back, Chloe glanced at the sky. And deep in her chest, she felt it. Her mother was still there. Not in her body, but in memories that even illness couldn't erase. The letter echoed softly in her mind. You're going to fall many times, my girl. But you'll always remember the woman who once told you. Get up. You can do it. The day started like any other, with the clinking of spoons in the drawer and the sweet scent of fennel tea drifting through the house. Chloe was in the kitchen, slicing bread, when a sudden scream echoed from the bedroom. Get out of here. Her mother's voice was sharp, unfamiliar, filled with fear. Chloe ran, heart pounding. "Mom, it's me." "It's okay, it's just me, Chloe." But Lucy looked at her like she was seeing a ghost. Her eyes wide, distrustful. "You're not Chloe. Chloe has pigtails. She's at school. Who are you? Why are you touching my things?" Chloe froze. She tried to smile, but the pain throbbed just beneath her skin. "It's me, Mom," she said gently, stepping closer. But Lucy flinched, backing away suddenly. "It's okay. I just wanted to help you with your bath. Don't touch me. Where's my daughter? Where's Marissa?" "Marissa." "Herself." Chloe walked out of the room slowly. She didn't say a word. She didn't cry. She just closed the door behind her and let the silence fill the spaces of the house. She went to her bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the box of letters. The third one, marked with a number 3, was waiting. The envelope read, "When I seem like someone else." She opened it. "My sweet Chloe. Maybe today you'll look at me and not recognize who I am. Maybe I'll say cruel things, or call you by a name that isn't yours. Maybe you'll feel like you've lost me. But you haven't. I'm still here, hidden beneath layers of fog, trying to find my way back. Alzheimer's will dress me in clothes that don't belong to me. It'll give me scared eyes, harsh words, fears that were never mine. But that's not who I am, my daughter. It's just the illness. It's just the wind blowing through the house. If I scream, remember my laughter. If I push you away, remember the comfort of my arms. If I forget your name, remember how I used to whisper it as you slept. And when everything feels like it's falling apart, look at me with the love I planted in you. That love is my anchor. And it'll be yours too." Chloe couldn't hold back the tears. But they weren't tears of pain, they were tears of understanding. The mother who screamed at her wasn't the same one who made heart-shaped pancakes. And yet, she was. Alzheimer's hadn't erased the love. It only covered it sometimes, like mist over a blooming field. That evening, Chloe returned to her mother's room. Lucy was sleeping peacefully, a floral blanket pulled up to her chin. Her face relaxed, almost serene. Chloe sat beside her and took her hand. She didn't say anything. Because in that silence, there was a reunion. The house was dark. Chloe could feel the weight of the day stacked on her shoulders, like every task had left behind an invisible brick pressed into her soul. Dinner dishes still sat in the sink, medicine bottles lined up like tiny sentinels, and the notebook filled with dosage schedules now stained with a drop of tea. Lucy had been restless all afternoon. She talked to people who weren't there, kept asking to go home even though she was home, and refused her food with the same childlike defiance that had become all too common. Now she was asleep. And Chloe, sitting on the kitchen floor, felt like she just couldn't anymore. The tears came quietly, clenched between her teeth. It wasn't just sadness, it was exhaustion. A deep loneliness that ached from the inside, as if she herself had been fading away along with her mother. What if I disappeared for just one day? Just to sleep. Just to breathe. Would anyone understand? With trembling hands, she reached for the box on the nightstand. The fourth letter felt heavier than the rest. Written in her mother's still delicate handwriting, the envelope read, "When you don't know what to do anymore." She opened it with tear-wet fingers. "My daughter. I know there will be days when the world feels far too big. Too heavy. You'll feel small, alone, guilty for even thinking about giving up, if only for a moment. But that isn't weakness, Chloe. It's being human. You're not a machine. You weren't born to be perfect. You were born to love. And love, my dear, is exhausting sometimes. Love asks so much of us that we forget about ourselves. Maybe that's where you are today. Maybe you think you can't take another step. So stop. Breathe. Close your eyes and remember. You are the best part of me. Do you remember the day you got stuck up in the tree? You must have been about 7. You'd climbed up to get a kite and then couldn't figure out how to get down. You cried, called out for me. But I waited. I sat down on the grass and said, "Trust yourself, sweetheart. I'm right here. You're not alone." And you came down. Shaking, yes. But you came down. And in the end, you jumped straight into my arms. That day taught me that your courage lives right in the middle of your fear, and that has never changed. Not even on your most tired days. Not even when you think you're getting it all wrong. Not even when it all feels like too much. What you're doing now, I would call that a miracle. And if my body and mind would let me, I would hold you tight right now. Just like you hold me, every day. Even when I don't realize it. Chloe slid down to the floor, pressing the letter to her chest, sobbing like a child. Those words were exactly what she needed. They wouldn't fix everything. They wouldn't erase the exhaustion. But they made it make sense. They gave her something solid to stand on. A few minutes later, still with tear-glossed eyes, she went to check on her mom. Lucy was sleeping on her side. When Chloe gently adjusted the blanket, her mother mumbled something, barely a whisper. "Thank you." Chloe froze. Her heart skipped a beat. It was just one word. But it meant everything. She smiled through red, puffy eyes. "Yes, Mom. I'm still here. For both of us." That morning, Chloe stayed in bed longer than usual. The silence in the house felt heavier somehow, like the absence of voices had become a second skin she could no longer peel off. Her mom was sleeping in the next room. Sunlight slipped through a crack in the curtain, drawing faint lines on the floor. Her phone sat silent on the nightstand. No alerts. No messages. Chloe realized it had been weeks since she'd spoken to anyone besides Lucy, and even then, it wasn't always real conversation. Just gestures. Repetitions. Silence. In the kitchen, she made breakfast. Tried to make small talk with her mom, who only mumbled in response, eyes fixed on some point on the wall. The pressure in Chloe's chest grew, like something inside her was slowly sinking, heavy, steady, inescapable. That's when she reached for the box. Letter number 5 was waiting. The envelope read, "When you feel like you're all alone." She opened it. "My Chloe. It's strange to think that someone so full of life could ever feel invisible. But I know it happens, especially when you give everything you've got, day after day, with no applause, no break, no one really seeing you. Maybe that's how you feel today, like you've disappeared into the routine. Like you're no longer you, but just the shadow of someone who takes care of everyone else. I wish I could be there to remind you, with a hug, that you are still whole. Even when you feel broken. Remember when you were little and couldn't fall asleep alone? You used to say the night swallowed the sounds and that the silence was loud. So I'd leave a pillow next to you, the one with my perfume. You'd hug it like it was me. And you'd sleep. You weren't alone then. And you're not alone now. My love is that pillow. Invisible, maybe. But real. Always with you." Chloe held the letter to her chest. The scent of her mother, lavender with a hint of fresh laundry, came rushing back, almost as if it were in the air around her. And for a few moments, she let herself just feel. She got up, washed her face, put on a jacket, and stepped outside for a walk to the corner. The wind touched her cheeks like a forgotten kindness. Up ahead, the neighbor with the yellow gate waved. "Morning, Chloe. Need anything?" She hesitated for a second. Then smiled. "Not today. But thank you for asking." Just a sentence. Just a small gesture. But in that moment, there was space. There was air. Chloe walked back home with eyes a little brighter. Maybe the loneliness was real. But love, that was even more real. Time felt suspended that morning. Lucy sat in her armchair, eyes lost somewhere beyond the window. Chloe had been calling her for minutes, no response. Not even a twitch of the brow, not a blink. Just a body present, and a soul tucked far away. "Mom, it's me." Chloe knelt beside her. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. She tried singing an old song, one her mother used to hum when Chloe was little. But only the sound of her own voice filled the room. It was like singing into a canyon where the echo never comes back. In the bedroom, envelope number 6 waited. She knew it was time. She sat on the bed, hugged the letter to her chest, and took a deep breath. In the bottom corner, it read, "When I can no longer hear you." She opened it. "My daughter. There will come a time when my ears won't understand your voice anymore. Not because I don't want to hear you, but because the bridge between me and the world will be gone. You'll call my name, and I won't answer. You'll tell me something beautiful, and I won't smile. But listen, even if I don't react, even if I seem far away, my love is still there. Remember how you used to pretend you were asleep, just so you could hear me sing? I knew. But I kept singing. Because you needed my voice to make it through the night. Now I'm the one who needs yours. Even in the silence. Keep talking to me. Keep touching me. Because love speaks louder than words." Chloe pressed the letter to her lips, as if sealing a kiss to a memory. Then came a soft knock at the door. It was the nurse. "Hi, are you Chloe?" "Yes, I am. I'm Matthew." The social worker reached out to me. "I know it's not always easy to accept help," he said gently, without pushing, "but I'm here to give you a bit of rest." "Only if you're ready." Chloe hesitated. She looked inward, into the quiet chaos. Into herself. "Come in." Matthew took off his shoes and observed the room with calm, patient eyes. He adjusted Lucy's pillow, checked her blood pressure, and massaged her hands with an oil that smelled faintly of rosemary. As he finished organizing his supplies, he looked at Chloe with genuine warmth. "I've cared for many Alzheimer's patients, every story is different, but there's one thing they all have in common, the love hidden behind the pain. I know I'm not family," he added, handing her a small card, "but I'm here to help. My number's on there. Call anytime. Even if it's just to talk. Sometimes, we just need to hear our own voice being heard." His voice was calm, unhurried. He didn't intrude, he simply offered. Later that afternoon, Chloe sat on the porch with the letter in her lap. Matthew approached quietly. "Mind some company?" he asked. She nodded. He sat beside her. In silence. "This letter, my mom wrote it. Before she forgot," he finished softly, as someone who understood more than he said. She read it aloud. Matthew listened. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. When she was done, he handed her a mug. "Lemongrass tea. Helps you breathe better." And then, gently, "I know it feels like the world is slowly crumbling, and no one sees how strong you've been. But I see it. And I'll tell you this, from the heart, anyone who keeps caring like you do, even in the silence, even exhausted, is doing something bigger than words. They're loving in a way that time can never erase." Chloe took the cup with trembling hands. Looked at him. For the first time, someone was there for her, not just for her mother. And in that shared silence, there was peace. A professional presence, yes. But deeply human. The kind of company that, in that moment, was worth everything. The garden was quiet, scented by freshly watered daisies. Chloe and Matthew sat side by side on the old wooden bench, where the box still rested. The sky was full of stars, but neither of them looked up. They were looking inward. "Chloe, you don't talk much about yourself." She paused, searching his face. "But sometimes, when you're quiet, it feels like there's a whole world inside you." Matthew, smiling softly, eyes on his hands. "There are things we learn to carry slowly, you know? Without too much noise. But I think tonight I can share a little of mine with you. Chloe didn't answer. She just waited. Matthew took a deep breath, like he was unlocking a door inside himself. Matthew. I was married. Her name was Helena. She was a nurse too, and she's the reason I chose this path. We met at the hospital, both taking care of the same terminal patient. It was beautiful, you know? It started in a place of pain, but grew into something so gentle, so full of life, it felt like it would last forever. Chloe watched him silently. The name Helena lingered in the air for a moment, suspended like a fragile memory. Matthew. She got sick 3 years later. Leukemia. Too fast. Too unfair. And I did everything I could. Even what I couldn't. But in the end, all I could do was stay by her side. The way you've stayed by your mom. He looked into Chloe's eyes, and for the first time, something cracked. A veil lifted. Matthew. When she passed, I thought I'd never be able to care for anyone again. It felt like everything inside me had died with her. But then, one day I realized, that was the part of me she loved the most. The part that didn't give up on people. And here I am. Chloe, her voice trembling. Matthew, you know what it's like to love someone all the way to the end. And to keep going. He just nodded. Then Chloe reached out and took his hand. No rush. No wait. A simple gesture that held everything. Chloe. I'm glad you chose to keep going. And that somehow, the road brought you here. Matthew smiled. A small smile. But the most real one he'd given in a long, long time. The sunlight slipped through the crack in the curtain with a rare gentleness that morning. Chloe woke up feeling lighter, as if the night had taken a bit of the darkness with it. Matthew arrived right at 9, as always. In his hand, a wildflower wrapped in a napkin. For Lucy. Found it on the way, he said with a smile. Thanks, Matthew. Today, feels like it might actually be a good day, Chloe replied, not pretending to be optimistic. She meant it. While Matthew sorted through the meds, Chloe ran her fingers over the top of the letterbox. Only a few were left. She picked up number 8. In the bottom corner of the envelope, written in smaller letters than usual, it read, "When everything feels like it's fading." She opened it slowly, expecting another goodbye wrapped in words. But this letter was different. My Chloe. If you've made it this far, maybe things are more confusing than ever. Maybe I no longer know who I am or who you are. And still, you're here. And even if I can't say it, I'm grateful. But today, I want to leave you a gift. A small box. You know where to look. That old wooden bookshelf in the guest room, remember the false back? It's there. Filled with things I may have one day forgotten myself. But they're pieces of us. Inside, you'll find smiles that time couldn't erase. And maybe, if you're lucky, even a little piece of your father. That kind, sad man who didn't stay long, but loved you with all he had. Open it. Touch it. Remember. And if you can, tell me. Even if I don't understand. Because sometimes, my daughter, remembering out loud is the best way to keep love alive. Chloe's heart skipped a beat. Matthew, can you help me with something? A few minutes later, the two of them were kneeling in the guest room, pulling out old books from the shelf. Chloe smiled when she found the slightly loose panel. A soft click. And there it was, the box. Dark wood, tied with a faded blue ribbon. When she opened it, the scent of aged paper and lavender slipped out like a whisper from the past. Wow! Chloe said, pulling out the first item, a red ribbon from when she wore her hair in little braids. Then came a tiny diary, childhood drawings, beaded necklaces, a rag doll with Clarinia embroidered on it. Among the papers, a rare photo. That's my dad, Chloe said softly. He looks like a gentleman, Matthew commented. He was, but he was also sad. He wasn't around long. But I remember he used to laugh when he put me on his shoulders. The kind of laugh that came from deep in his chest. And my mom would smile just watching us. Chloe carried the box to the living room. She sat beside her mother, who was looking at the daisies in the vase, along with the wildflower Matthew had brought. "Mom, look at this." She showed the doll, the photo, the ribbon. Lucy didn't say anything for a long moment. But then, she reached out and touched the red ribbon with her wrinkled fingers. Brought it slowly to her face. And smiled. "Pretty," she whispered, out of context, but full of tenderness. Chloe started laughing softly. "You used to insist on tying my hair every morning. I'd always take it down later, but you'd fix it again the next day." Matthew sat nearby, quietly observing with respect. "And this little doll, Mom, you told me she was magic, remember? That if I whispered a secret to her, she'd turn it into a dream." "Dream," Lucy repeated. "That's right." And then, without warning, Lucy laughed. A soft, short laugh, but real. A sound long lost that returned like a wave out of nowhere. Chloe looked at Matthew, surprised. He smiled back with his eyes. That afternoon, for a few brief minutes, the three of them were there. Whole. Present. Smiling. Just a moment. But in that moment, everything was real again. Midnight settled over the house with a silence that felt different. Lucy had been sleeping since late afternoon. Her breathing had grown heavier, her body sinking deeper into the cushions, like she was slowly letting go of the weight of the world. Chloe couldn't sleep. There was a knot in her stomach, a restlessness that didn't come from anxiety, but from a quiet kind of acceptance, painful and peaceful all at once. In the living room, Matthew was asleep in the armchair. He had come on his own that night. "Just in case you need me and I'm too far away," he had said, with that same calm smile he always wore. Chloe smiled as she saw him there, wrapped in a thin blanket, his face softly lit by the glow of the lamp. She felt grateful. But also something more, a rare kind of presence that didn't need words to explain itself. She went to the bedroom and picked up letter number 9. On the envelope, it read, "When the end draws near." She opened it gently. It smelled like jasmine. "My sweet Chloe. If this letter has reached you, it means my time is near. And I want you to know, I'm not afraid. I've lived all I needed to live. I've watched you grow. I've heard your laugh 1,000 times. And that is more than enough for me. When you were born, the world felt small. All I could see was you. Your first cry was the most beautiful sound of my life. I was shaking all over, and I thought, now I'm not just mine. Now I'm hers. And I never was just mine again. If you cry when I'm gone, let yourself cry. But then, breathe. Open the window. Feel the wind. And remember, I'll be in everything that touches you with gentleness. In the smell of coffee. In the sound of rain. In the love you'll one day find fully. And if that love comes from someone who truly sees you, let it in. You deserve that too. Chloe read it with her breath held. The end of the letter felt knowing. As if her mother could somehow see, even without sight. She folded the paper, walked to the living room, and sat beside Matthew. He stirred slowly. New letter, he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. Yeah, the second to last, Chloe replied. Want to hear it? He nodded gently. She read. From start to finish. Her voice trembled here and there, but she didn't stop. When she finished, Matthew stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he said softly. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Chloe. And one of the most human. She smiled, sadness in her eyes. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a cracked piece glued back together. I know, he said. But even broken pieces shine when the light hits them. And you have light even if you don't see it. A silence fell between them, full of meaning. Matthew reached out his hand, slowly. Chloe placed hers over his. Nothing else was said. But in that quiet touch, between two people who'd survived love, something new had begun to form. The next morning, Lucy was still asleep. Chloe sat by the bed, holding her hand with a tenderness only love understands. Matthew brought coffee. The three of them were there. Together. And in that rare moment, Chloe smiled. Not out of longing, but for the now. The night seemed suspended in time. The house breathed along with it, as if it too was saying goodbye. Chloe sat by the bed, her eyes fixed on her mother's face. Lucy was asleep, or perhaps something deeper than that. Her features were soft, like someone who had finally found their way home. Her chest rose and fell in a nearly imperceptible rhythm, as if life was quietly fading away, asking permission to go. Chloe held her hand. She didn't say anything. But inside, she said everything. "Mom, if you can still hear me, thank you for staying as long as you could. You can go now. I'll keep you here," she whispered, touching her chest, her eyes filled with love. Then, Lucy's hand gave a faint squeeze to Chloe's fingers. It was a tiny gesture. Almost involuntary. But for Chloe, it was a full embrace made of memories, farewells, and forgiveness. And then, she was gone. As gently as she had lived. Like an evening breeze. Like a flower folding up at night. Like a story that ends knowing it will be told forever. Chloe didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just cried with her whole body. Like a child waking from a sweet dream, understanding for the first time what it means to miss someone. Later, the sky began to lighten. Matthew made coffee but waited outside, respecting the silence. Chloe, alone in her mother's room, opened the final letter. The envelope had no number. Only a title written in faded ink. For when everything seems to be over. She took a deep breath. And she read. My Chloe. If this letter has reached you, it's because the world has grown quieter. But I want you to know, love doesn't end. It just moves to a new place. Today, you might feel like everything is over. But the end, my dear, is just a curve that hides a new beginning. You will walk this road without me now. But every step you take will still carry my rhythm. Every act of care you offer, is my love still working through you. I'm saying goodbye to the body. Not to you. You are the home where the best part of me will live forever. Remember when you were scared of the dark and said it swallowed you up? I used to turn on a warm bedside lamp and say, the dark only scares us until we learn to listen to what it hides. Today, listen. In the darkness of grief, there will be a light inside you. And it will grow. You will love again. You will laugh again. And when that happens, don't feel like you're betraying my memory. You'll be honoring me. Because everything I ever dreamed was that you would be whole. Even without me. Chloe read aloud, with Matthew by her side. He didn't say anything. He just wiped away a tear from her cheek with his fingertips. She smiled. It was a short smile. Cracked. But it was real. I think she knew all along, didn't she? Matthew nodded. She knew. And she left everything ready. Even the path back to yourself. That afternoon, after everything, the goodbyes, the silence, the hugs, Chloe went into the garden. The same one where her mother used to talk to the flowers. She planted the red ribbon between the daisies. Left the chest on the wooden bench. And stood there, eyes closed, feeling the wind. Matthew approached. He sat beside her. He didn't ask for space. He didn't invade hers. He simply offered what Lucy had once left with him. True presence. She rested her head on his shoulder. Time passed slowly. And in that moment, the world wasn't sad anymore. It was full of memories. and of a new love, taking root with calm strength.